you be in 30 years' time? The world of 2050 will look radically different to our world today, and the world of business within the economy will be almost unrecognizable. We will have a circular economy. The principles of reduce, reuse, repair, refurbish, and recycle will be the name of the game for companies. We will have new business models, diversified materials, closed loops across value chains. We wouldn't dream of using virgin, non-renewable materials, and materials will be traceable, renewable, and recycled. We will have regenerative and equitable food systems. We won't just avoid harm, but we will actively restore nature and seek to reverse previous damage. The way we grow food will respect biodiversity and be carbon neutral. Consumers will value their food and minimize waste. Unavoidable waste along the food value chain will be used in materials or energy as part of a circular bioeconomy. I know what you're thinking. Sounds lovely, Anna, but a tad unrealistic. Probably time for you to come back to reality. But this isn't how I'm saying the future will be. This is how governments are saying the future should look like. Take a look at the EU and its new Green Deal. This is what companies are saying the future should look like. Take a look at what CEOs have said as part of WBCSD's 2050 vision. This is how civil society is saying the future should look like. Take a look at the latest State of Climate Actions report. This is already where we're headed, with new regulation, new investor demands, enhanced consumer pressure. Why? Why can't we just continue business as usual, which feels a lot more comfortable than this radical transformation of business we've been hearing about? Because what we've been taught about business today does not equip us for the world of tomorrow. Worse, it makes us all part of the problem, whether we like it or not. The world has warmed already by 1.1 degrees as compared to pre-industrial levels. And we're on track for warming of between 3.3 and 5.7 degrees. A report released just this week by Climate Action Tracker shows us that even with all the promises we're hearing about from the governments in Glasgow, we're heading for 2.4 degrees of warming, 2.4 degrees. Anyone who has read the IPCC report on 1.5 degrees knows that already warming to 1.5 degrees will be tough going. And anything above that is actually very hard for us to imagine in terms of fallout on human health, human migration, rise of famines, conflicts, extreme weather conditions, uninhabitable conditions, the list goes on. The IPCC shows us that limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees by the end of this century is possible, but it will require rapid, immediate, and economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions reductions, as well as the removal of carbon from the atmosphere. So by 2050, in 30 years' time, we need to have stopped emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere that Earth can naturally absorb through its ecosystems. And what this means is that in the next 10 years, by 2030, we need to have halved our greenhouse gas emissions. So we're looking at a radically different way of doing things than how we've done them until now, a radical transformation of business. I'm not even going to go into the state of biodiversity loss, of global material footprints, the massive inequality and vulnerabilities we've been seeing. So, okay, this is grim, and we may be feeling a little depressed or hopeless or angry or lethargic about what is happening around us. There's a famous joke that helped all of us who were in Glasgow bring some degree of levity to the situation. So a man commits to phasing out his alcohol consumption by 2050. He will continue drinking as normal, but then he promises to reduce his consumption in 2049. By then he'll be 101. The joke struck a chord because obviously taking action later will be quite simply too late. What matters really is the next 10 years, in fact, the next 9 years. Personally, I find this very empowering and humbling in equal measure, because all of us here, all of you today hearing us, watching us, and those around the table are living a truly historic time where our actions as consumers, as voters, as business leaders will impact the quality of life on this planet for years and years to come. And some even say the future survival of humanity on it. So let's come back to the basics here. As a business owner, sure, you can continue business as usual. You probably have a few more years before regulation and external pressure starts to become too uncomfortable. You may be thinking, I'd prefer to make my business profitable, get it off the ground before I start to think about sustainability. Or, okay, I'll wait for others to pave the way in terms of new ways of sourcing. And I can ride on the wave later, sure, you can. But ask yourself, why would you build a business on a model that has a shelf life, a clear use-by date? How could you not, starting out today, want to build a business that can scale and grow into the future and be here in 2050 to tell the story of how you started? Every day, I work with large multinationals that are looking at reimagining their business models, that are looking to pivot how they've always done things, how they're doing things, to be ready for the future of business. You have a unique opportunity. You can do that now. You can shake yourself free from the business as usual and already be in the business of tomorrow. No transformation of your business is required, but you are playing a role in the wider transformation of the sector that you're operating in. You're all innovative thinkers and business creators. I have no doubt that you can do it. So let's hear now from 3 founders who have done just that. Natasha Steele started to forage ingredients in her own allotment to turn them into cordials. And she started selling them at her local farmer's market. The idea took off and Urban Cordial was born. Nicholas Villacarp has embarked on a journey to lower the impact of humans on the planet by instigating a culture of change in the apparel world. He co-founded Two Lives London with Tina Lilienthal, a dream come true in his words. And Terence Chung decided with Kelly Yee to turn a spare room into an experiment room to turn fruit byproducts into sustainable cosmetics. 2 important challenges tackled through one business, FRUU. So let me now hand over to them. So let me bring Natasha, Nicholas and Terence into the room. Welcome. We're so pleased to have you today. So let's start with you, Natasha, and I'll ask each of you the same question, then we'll get more into a conversation. Can you share with us, how did you get started? What propelled you? Why did you do it?
Yeah, so as you said, I started my business foraging for fruit in my allotment and turning them into cordials. And foraging, for anyone that's done it, is, you know, it's easy if you're just foraging for one. It's not so easy if you're foraging more. And we now are using, you know, tons of fruit at a time, so that's just not possible. So when we were looking to move from foraging to buying in fruit, it was around the time when Rubies in the Rubble started, the condiment company that uses food waste, and the idea of food being thrown away at the farm was starting to make more noise in mainstream media. So I started to look at it more closely, and the farms that I had initially contacted to purchase fruit from, I then contacted again and said, do you get surplus fruit? Is there fruit that doesn't make it to the supermarket? And every farm has said, yes, we do. I had one farm that said no, and that was about 2 years ago. But then last year they were like, yeah, sure. So we do get loads of fruit that doesn't get thrown. So it just was, business-wise, fortunately, it does cost less if I look at it from a purely business and, money-making exercise. But the sheer volume of fruit that is going to waste is really shocking. I get a lot of question a lot of the time when speaking to like potential investors or just other businesses, what if what if that fruit runs out? And great, I would love that fruit to run out. We're not in a place where that fruit is going to run out anytime soon. And so that's why I started using it, because it's a real tragedy, essentially. I also studied a master's in water science. That got me really thinking about it, because when you look at, there's a term called virtual water. So it's not the water that you can see in a product, it's the water that goes into producing that product. So the idea that to grow an apple, one apple is something I can't remember off the top of my head, but like 7 liters of water. You know, meat, it takes a much higher water consumption. And so studying that for a year, also I was just like, it's not just the physical product that's being thrown away, it's all of the virtual products that you don't see, and the energy, you know, even the sun's energy that goes into growing it. You know, what a waste. The sun is an amazing source of energy, so to just ignore it,
yes,
it's just not okay. So for me, it was just a no-brainer to do that. And so for the past 5.5 years, we've now saved over 110 tons from going to waste, of which probably about 70 to 80% of that is in the last 2.5 years. And that's just when we went from a kitchen making it ourselves to a manufacturer that could handle much higher volume.
What an amazing journey, Natasha. Really incredible. Were the farmers surprised when you called them? Were you the first person who'd asked them about this?
There are other companies doing it as well. So wasn't the first, but I think I'm now starting to be taken, the business is starting to be taken a lot more seriously. So originally we'd buy potentially, you know, maybe 400 kilos of raspberries. And now we're asking for, you know, 6 tons of raspberries at a time. So now they get in touch with me saying, you know, we have this surplus, do you need it? Whereas there are other companies that use it as well. But I think, but there aren't many. And a lot of it does get, for berries, a lot of the time the farmers and for tree fruit as well, like apples and pears, during the summer, they'll just let it rot into the ground because it's cheaper than getting it disposed of, or go to biofuel, which isn't always that energy efficient. So they'd much rather give it to companies like us. Yes, there are others doing it, but not enough.
Thanks, Natasha. I was just listening to comments made at COP by Clover, who was saying, isn't it crazy that we value more a tree dead than alive? In a way we account for value. Thank you. Nicholas, what about you? How did you get into this?
Yeah, so I come from about 17 years career in the fashion industry. I started straight off working for very large companies, corporate global brands. And it was quite interesting to see, obviously, when you're a junior, you start learning the processes, you go to the factories and you start, you know, doing all this sourcing, traveling, go and see where the material comes from and how they spin it, how they pick it, how they dye it, how they, you know, cutting the fabric, the wastage there and so on. I think over the years, it just became more and more, you know, it really stayed with me. It's like, but there's so much stuff left over. Why don't we use this stuff? It's like, oh no one wants it because we make everything to order. But it's like, but surely if we flip it, you know, upside down, we tell them this is what we've got and we can make it these many, someone will be interested. And that's how the idea started with Two Lives. So I mean the textile, the fashion industry is actually set up traditionally to generate waste, and that's where Two Lives comes in. So in a way, like Natasha was saying, we're not going to run out of textile waste anytime soon because you know, by default, any given brand will produce an average of 5% over than what they need. And then this 5%, because it was made to order, then no one else wants it because that brand already had it. It's like, guys, we'll have it and we'll turn it into something else. So it's a bit the concept of, instead of ideation and design and looking at trend and then go and design the collection and produce the fabric specifically to that. What we do, we start at the very end. We go and find the fabrics and then see how much we can do and which ones work and what colors are available, and work it backwards. And in a way, the customer can't really, because we work both B2C and B2B. So we also work a bit as an agency. So we'll design and source for corporate brands that want merchandise and so on. And we also have our own brand. So when it's on the B2B side, the amount these clients can order from us is directly dictated by how much fabric there is of the one that they're interested in. So if that day there's 200, there's 200 units. If that day there's 100, there's 100, and so on. And if they want a repeat order, sorry, it's gone. You need to go and find a new one. So just by doing that, in the last year, you were talking about virtual water, Natasha. I think it's a very prevalent subject in the textile industry. We managed to sell, 12 million liters of water, because we predominantly use cotton, and cotton is very water intensive. Like I used to specialize in denim, so it's jeans, and it's most of it is cotton, and so looked a lot into where does the cotton come from, organic cotton versus regular cotton, so on, and it's incredible the amount of energy and water that goes into producing textiles. So we're currently looking at how to become, devise ways of becoming circular, and it's proving very difficult. But the one thing we can do in the meantime, while we're trying to figure circularity in the fashion industry, is to see, where does the carbon emission, where is it, most prevalent in the process and the life cycle of design process and textile and so on. And we discovered there's actually 75% of the energy goes into producing the fiber that then gets produced into the fabric. So it's not so much the garment manufacturing, it's the fabric. So that's where we are putting all our attention at the moment. Like, can we work with those factories? Can they use renewable energy? Can we recycle fabrics? Can we, there's all these recycled yarns. It's textiles inherently. There's two ways we can recycle yarns. I mean, that's not dead stock, but obviously only using dead stock is not gonna, save the planet per se. So we have to look at a plethora of solutions. So that's the using textile waste is our main job, you could say. But that's something we're looking at. When you recycle yarns, you can either do it mechanically or chemically, and it's it all comes with a huge implications, and it's complicated. And for example, if you break down cotton to recycle it mechanically, the fibers get shorter and shorter, and you can only recycle that fiber so many times. So it's inherently cannot become circular cotton as we stand nowadays with the technology we have and so on. And yeah, we're a very young startup. We only took off about a year and a half ago, and we were quite surprised at the high demand of the services we supply, not only as a brand, but as an agency for companies that, they want to do the right thing and get closer to the net, zero carbon targets. And then they realize that it's such a complex journey, and that's where we come in and we work with them. So we always say we work with big corporations to help them think and act like a startup, which we are. So there's a very good symbiotic relation there with these big companies that we work with.
Amazing. Yeah, really helping push the boundaries of these bigger companies, and they learn from you, and then you can also sort of amplify have their weight behind your mission. Really, really good to hear. Terence, what about you? What drove you to start FRUU?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a super long story actually, but I'll talk about all of that. I would say in a moment. But as a company, FRUU, we kind of started with the goal of essentially kind of like instigator to the entire chemical industry, really, because if you look into the cosmetic industry, it's essentially a sister company of the petrochemical industry. Without petrochemical industry, the cosmetic industry wouldn't be where it is right now. And as a result, right now, if you look into the products that you can still buy from shelf, pretty much 90% of it, if not more, are still made from petrochemical. Quite a lot of it are the byproduct of crude oil. And essentially, most of these material, by the time it gets to you, so for example, if you want a kilo of material gets to you, 99 kilo of carbon would have already been wasted in the process of transporting, synthesis, etc. So the whole material sort of cycle is already very carbon intensive. And if you look into the current trends in terms of how the industry overall is moving towards natural materials, whilst from a customer point of view, it's good. It seems to be moving towards the right direction with renewable materials, stuff that you can get from plants. There's quite a lot of greenwashing around where these material comes from. So of course, a lot of them would have potentially come from rainforests where they have clear rainforests and causes deforestation, and results uses a lot of pesticides, uses a lot of water resources to grow these material. So overall, if you think we're going to move the entire industry into just using natural material, that's not really the most sustainable solution either, because that means we're probably going to have to clear more farmland, clear more rainforests in order to clear out additional lands to grow these resources. So as a business, we approach it and think, where can we find these resources without approaching into more natural habitats, and whilst not relying on petrol that we take from the ground. So then we started looking into, okay, what are we making a lot of that we're still not making use of 100%. And obviously there's already, when we started, there was already quite a lot of news pieces around how a lot of food that we are supposed to consume aren't being consumed, similar to what Urban, Cordial and our businesses are finding. So we thought that probably is a good angle to look into, and fruits probably is the best to look into because of the fact that people seems to be happy with having fruits in their products without realizing actually most of these so-called sort of fruit scents or fruit-based product actually only have, I don't know, 0.1% of fruits in them, and the rest are probably petrochemical and water. So yeah, that's kind of like our business starting point. As a personal starting point, it was a bit messy because I mean, I never thought that I would ever get into the cosmetic industry. Like as a teenager or even when I graduated, I was a biochemist to start with. And when I graduated, I kind of never really want to get into the business world, and that's, I kind of want to use my knowledge and skill in a different way, in a way that would help the world. So I went into academia for a bit, and at the time it was the most urgent problem of looking for antibiotics for curing MRSA and stuff like that. And after 4 years, then I went into education a little bit, and that's kind of when I started to get a bit lost, but I also got the idea of sort of FRUU because there were lessons where we go into, and we were told that we need to talk a little more about sustainability, etc., which I remember as a type of thing that I would used to hear as a kid in a classroom, talking about, oh, how the whole earth is in trouble, etc. We need to do more to help. 30 years ago, I was probably talking about, oh, just not throwing rubbish on the ground. But now it's just so much more complex than that, right? We have to talk about how we consume less carbon, how do we make better use of resources, and really, I just realized how challenging that whole sustainability piece is. You tell your children to be more sustainable, but you don't know how, essentially. And if you look around you, there's no solution really, because if you just look from consumer world, everyone are still using petrochemical. we're just still so reliant on it. We just can't cut it off like tomorrow. So there will be a transition, but that there isn't even that first 1 or 2 step into a transition. That's what I find most challenging, and that's when the whole idea of FRUU started brewing, and the fact that I have a bit of chemical knowledge, biology knowledge, as well as knowledge into cosmetic formulation, because I was doing a bit of consultancy work at the time. And also the fact that I was always kind of like a designer wannabe. So that all of those skills kind of got put together, and that became FRUU. So it started like a silly idea, because I remember it was like Easter holiday or something. I was off school, and then I had nothing to do, and I came over FRUU, and then my girlfriend Kelly came home, and then she was like, "What have you been doing all day?" And I thought that this is the idea I've got, and that kind of just rose on, and
doesn't sound like you got too lost to me. It sounds like you got lost, but then you found yourself. And these stories from the three of you really show the way in which you're revolutionizing what we consider in terms of what are the inputs into my business. Do I use the typical inputs, or actually do I reuse inputs and resources that have already used up resources from the planet to be used and to be here? And therefore I'm not using more of them, I'm reusing them. And that is just three really, really lovely journeys to hear. I'm really curious, especially for those I know in the room hearing us, about your perception now of how this is taking off. We hear a lot about drivers for this, whether it's consumers. I did a whole research thing for Cambridge and found, well, yeah, they really want to, but it's hard for them to actually do it and vote with their money. We hear a lot about investors and banks, but really, are they really driving this? We hear about laws coming up, but when are they really going to become very concrete? What do you feel are the drivers that have helped you, if any, get on this journey that amplify your business? And where do you see this going? What are some of the drivers you think will become really important that will help propel your business and others like it? What do you have in mind, Natasha?
I think for me, the main driver for my business has just been predominantly consumers, and their want to be more sustainable. One of the things, and at the same hand, that our product isn't cheap, so we get pullback from the consumer saying, well, why? You use surplus fruit. Why should it cost £6 a bottle? And we talk about, our supply chain and how everyone gets paid a fair amount of money, and that actually our fruit isn't free. And there's all of these like misconceptions about industry, and especially when you're using a byproduct or a surplus product, that everyone has this assumption that it's free when it's not. But then you have everyone else that's like, yes, I want to live a more sustainable way. I want to consume more sustainable products, wear more sustainable products. And so they're happy to spend that money. I think there are some investors that are really keen on the idea of the circular economy, but when it comes to it, they find it hard to see a return. And so I don't think they're there yet. I think there are some. I think also, a lot of the investor world that I have come across is unfortunately very specific type of person. And I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm sure everyone can picture that person in their mind. And they're stuck in their ways. And so they can't see actually what effect being part of how positive being part of a circular economy can be, not just on the industry, that whatever it is that they're investing in, but on the wider world, essentially, in terms of everything from that industry to people's lives to everything. So it's a mix, but for my business, it has most certainly been the consumer that has helped grow it and get it to where it is.
Thanks. That's really, really good to hear, actually. Nicholas, what about you?
Similar to Natasha, I think it's a bit of a mix of, us seeing the problem and wanting to, add a solution to the problem, but also that we're also seeing, Natasha was saying, that consumers are changing their perception. Everyone is aware of it now. And I mean, I started, I remember 16, 15 years ago, we were putting organic cotton in items for big brands. And the buyers, they didn't understand, why should I pay more? Like, it looks the same. So we were being laughed at that point, because it was kind of, it wasn't in the bigger picture to try to okay, I understand that it's less pesticides and it takes, the yield is smaller, it's less water, therefore, it's more expensive, so on. But I think the main driver is just, I think it's because things are changing out there. Everyone, is willing to make a change, and we're all very, very aware that we have a million problems that we need to solve. I think it's also the excitement that it's a time to reinvent, for us in the fashion industry, is to reinvent ways of working, which for most of my career, they were, status quo, this is how you do it. And, you send off your request to the factory, they make it. Like, but why do we have to work like that? So it's, we find it very exciting that we basically, we are challenged to come up with new ways of solving, old existing problems that now people are aware of, whereas before they necessarily weren't. And I think when we work on the B2C with big corporates, I think that's the other thing that we find thrilling, is the education. We have to tell them, you can't just have any color or any fabric. It's like, we need to do backwards. We need to go and find the fabric first and then see what we can design out of that. And they go, oh my God, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, we always joke, it's the what's in the fridge concept. You open the fridge, you can always put something together with what you got in the fridge. It might look a bit funny sometimes, but if you're inventful enough and make it a feature, I think that was the other thing. I think, we wanted to show that upcycle doesn't necessarily mean like a patchwork old blankets, like most people will think of upcycled textiles or fashion. And this is, I think it's exciting to see when the clients kind of see where we're coming from, and that the solutions, I think that, these solutions become really easy for them, because we make it easy for them, because we've done all the thinking and all the figuring out and all the supply chain and all the networking, and how do you do this, and you need to build your relations with suppliers and manufacturers. And not in the beginning, people go like, you crazy, like, why do you want everything that I've got spare? Why don't we make a new collection? It's like, no, you're missing the point. So even with factories, we had to spend endless trips and many meetings trying to get them to understand what we're trying to do. It's very exciting, because now it's been a year and a half of this fighting on trying to get people that have been used to the status quo of manufacturing and sourcing and so on. Now they're starting to think like us. And it's quite exciting to see that there's a shift, and there is solutions if you want to. Like, we all just need to start thinking like that. And waste, unfortunately, tends to have a negative connotation to it, but I don't know, it's just material that hasn't been used, right? Like, it doesn't mean, I mean, we had someone that said, okay, what about recycled ocean plastic that gets turned into textiles? Isn't that dirty? It's like, no, of course not. It goes through a process, and so on. And it's like, okay, so, textile waste doesn't mean like old rags and, so on. So I think that's what's exciting, is when you see people go like, oh my God, this is something we can all do. And it's so, it can have an impact. Of course, by no means we're saying that we're going to save the world like this. This is only one tiny solution in a myriad of solutions we all need to start coming up with. And I think that the big difference from the traditional fashion industry that is very secretive and competitive, what we discover venturing into the conscious side of the fashion industry is that it's all about networking and sharing. So discoveries that we find, we'll discuss with other brands, and they'll give us, oh, we actually tried that. What you do, you know, we found that this worked best for us, and have you tried this? And it's just, there's something very exciting that it's all about working together instead of just, you know, holding it close to your chest and keeping to yourself and having a competitive edge. It's all about, you know, sharing your discoveries and letting everyone chip in and learn from everyone. So that's one of the main drivers for us, is the discoveries process.
Really, really nice to hear, Nicholas, and the ripple effect that you can have through the value chain by changing mindsets, and how that, you know, that the amplifying role you can play is really fantastic. Terence, what about you? What are the main drivers that you see?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of investor side of things and how the money, well, that like everyone or some people like to say, that money is what makes the world go around, right? So you can't ignore the money without, when you look into sustainability and see how could the money fit within the whole, what we call green economy. And I think the problem there is, if you think about just the last 100 years, so many different industry that's making money for investors are inherently very closely tied with the petrochemical industry. So I think a lot of investors are still stuck in their way of thinking, well, if we don't have fossil fuel, how are we going to make money with all these other industry? Well, for example, fashion industry, if we don't have polyester tomorrow, what are we going to do? So I think that there's still these new breed of investor called, obviously, impact investor, which obviously they'll look into their portfolio and see whether their money is contributing to businesses that adhere to certain sustainability practices. But I still feel like a lot of the businesses, they are only putting a front in for these type of impact investment to go through and to make it sound like they're doing the good stuff, whereas it's more greenwashing from a sort of financial point of view. But I mean, even with ourselves, we're speaking to investors that is actually even better than the impact investors that we've seen in the past. So I hope there will be more and more people with capital and money and just really understanding that in the future, we're like, all of your offspring is going to live on Earth still. They're not going to fly to Mars. They're not going to afford a ticket to go on that rocket and fly to Mars and be okay there. So I think there will be more and more of those capital becoming available and investing in alternative solution, but whether that is quick enough is probably what everyone's scratching their head about. I mean, in terms of what the consumers are moving towards, I think consumers nowadays are a lot more savvy in terms of thinking about where their products are being made, what are the materials inside the products, where are those materials being sourced from, are there any ethical credential when it comes down to the actual production of these materials, are there child labor involved, any sort of inequality involved. I mean, I think there's been huge stride towards that, if you think about things like fair trade, for example, but even for example, yesterday I was watching a clip of people in Pakistan, for example, making football for the Western world, and they get paid £3 a day. And how much does the football cost? £3, and they will probably make, I don't know, 20 a day. So overall, I think there's still huge sort of economic challenges when it comes down to sustainability as well as ethical side of things. But there's also a lot of problem about, I think, how sustainability is becoming the new luxury. So you've got all these luxurious brands trying to do good for the world for, I guess, the good reason, but a lot of these sustainable sort of incentive has to be funded by something. And with bigger brands, more expensive brands, they would have the profit margins to fund these sort of initiative. But if you were to go down to your local supermarket in Tesco, would all the brands be able to do that at the price that they can promise to people who can barely afford anything. I think another very big part of the conversation is sustainability inherently going to create another sort of problem, which is the inequality within sustainability as well. Because if you think about how in the Western world we can probably ditch our petrol car and buy electric car, for example, and then if you go to Ghana in Africa, for example, there are areas where people can barely afford a car, let alone an electric car. Then what are they going to do? Are they going to not have a car at all? So I think that's probably something that's going to become more and more challenging when leaders are going to get set much harder targets in terms of carbon consumption, material sourcing, etc.
The narrative on just transition and bringing people along as part of this transformation towards net zero has changed a lot over the last couple of years. And in Glasgow last week, and I'm seeing this week as well, it's really good to see. So the narrative, which is without bringing people along, there's no way we can actually reach our environmental ambitions. So it's not a question of we can do it maybe quicker if we sort of let people leave people behind, but if we bring them on, maybe it'll slow us down. No, you actually can't do it if you don't bring people along. And so sustainability has now become so much more holistic vision of how business gets done. But I know we have 10 minutes left, so I want to ask you, I think, a burning question, which if I was starting out a business, I would love to ask, which is tell us all, the dirty laundry and everything, and tell us about something that you did that maybe you wish you hadn't, something that you did that this actually worked out really well, I'm happy I did it this way. Any tips you have for companies starting out on this journey? What would you have liked to know as you were starting out? And we'll switch it up a bit and go Nicholas, Terence, and then Natasha. Nicholas.
Well, I think I would say don't be afraid to get it wrong. I think in the beginning it's very difficult because you might have a mission, a concept, an idea, and you need to find the context or the clients or the timing right where it sticks. So you just got to keep trying. We knew we wanted something sustainable and conscious and to solve a problem and to help the bigger picture. And we tried, and we had a lot of random conversations that led nowhere. But just don't give up, because it's a very long journey. And if you believe in it, and if it's got heads and tails and legs and eyes and the whole thing, then there's nothing that should stop you. I mean, obviously, finance can be an issue. We spend a lot of time doing it on the side, on weekends, in the evenings. It's a tough journey. But if you can just keep at it, and if you believe you've got something powerful, keep at it, because someone will listen. And that's literally what happened to us. We got a break, one big client, and then everything just the floodgates opened for us, and we got 10 corporate clients now. It's only been 18 months, so it's keep at it.
Oh, great, Nicholas, thank you. Terence.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of things, but I would say the most important thing is don't afraid to fail. Otherwise, you'll never make that first step. And also in business, you have to make so many decisions where probably 10 of those decisions that you make today, probably only 1 or 2 would work. But if you don't make those decisions and make strive going forwards, you would never get anywhere. So just don't get too personal about these decisions that you make that probably wouldn't work. But if just 20% of them work, that's going to be enough for you already.
Thank you, Natasha.
I don't think I can add much else to what Terence and Nicholas said. I think, don't be afraid to fail and to just keep going at it. If you believe in the idea and it makes business sense, then do it. I think the one tip I would give, which is not to do with the circular economy or anything, is I'm a sole owner of this business, and if I started another business, I would make sure I had a business partner. which sounds amusing, but I think it's really important actually to have somebody whose skills complement yours in terms of, you know, whether you have a creative and someone that's more corporate, or just someone to bounce ideas off of, to share in the stress, and to help the business grow faster. Without a doubt, my business would have grown faster if it wasn't just me right from the get-go. So yeah, if I ever started a business again, I would have a business partner.
Wise words, Natasha. Thank you. So in the remaining minutes that you sort of have left, tell me how you see the future of business. How do you see the future of your sector that you're in? If you're looking ahead, what would you like to see in it? Natasha, why don't you kick us off?
I see a shift. I do see more companies becoming more sustainable. Supermarkets are slowly starting to do it. They're thinking, we've had discussions with a couple of supermarkets that are looking into talking to the farms that they get their produce from, and turning the byproduct into something new. So I do see a shift in that. I just hope that it happens, you know, in our lifetime, because we can't really wait for it to not happen in our lifetime. And I think, you know, going on what Nicholas said earlier in terms of how people perceive waste as, you know, something grimy. When we rebranded our business almost 3 years ago, and when we rebranded it, we specifically chose not to write, you know, made from surplus, or, you know, uses waste fruit on the front of the label, because there's all of these connotations there of, you know, oh, so you're putting a moldy raspberry into that bottle, or oh, your apples are like full of maggots. And so we put British fruit and low in sugar, and the story of surplus is on the back. But I do see a shift of people starting to realize that that isn't the case. But it's a shame that we had to make a very conscious decision not to put that message on the front of our bottles, because of that perception of what byproduct looks like and what it is. And so, yeah, but I have, since doing that, I've slowly seeing more and more of a shift in the right direction. And I hope it can, you know, go across, and you know, Nicholas can talk to the fashion world, but I do think that shift is happening, and I can see it being more of the future of multiple industries, not just mine.
Great, Natasha. Nicholas, how about you?
I think it's a similar story for us in the fashion world. I think what's exciting that is not only you know, the way companies work or brands and the sourcing manufacturing, but it's the shift of consciousness of the consumer. It's one of the most exciting things, because like you know, like I said earlier, like we were trying to sell organic cotton 15 years ago, and it just, no one registered what was the point of it. And what's exciting now that the customer is looking out for these things. And I think what's exciting, which can be a bit daunting, is that the consumers are becoming a lot more clued up. But we find that very exciting, because like, yeah, come on, join us, like learn more about it. We'll tell you all about it. Like, another thing we're working on, for example, is also the transparency of our process, which is a mammoth task, I must admit. And it's, you know, it's a very long journey, but we're looking at measuring how much energy goes into our garment and so on. We're working with partners that can quantify that for us. And I think that's, you know, there's no reason why we can't change everything. And I think, especially coming from years and years of, you know, industry experience, where it felt quite like established, and no, this is how you do it. And it's like, you know, especially when you're a junior, then you just have to, you know, do as you're told, so to speak. And now it's, you know, it's our time to go, like, you know what, let's change it. Let's, you know, and it wouldn't really work unless the you know, the public is also hungry for change. Yeah. So that's what's exciting, that not only we want to change from the inside, it's the public also wants to change. So it's almost like, finally, okay, we finally met in this crossroad. Let's do this together.
And then it amplifies. It goes into this crescendo of movement. Terence, what about you?
I think within the industry, we've been seeing a lot of movement. just looking into upcycle ingredients. I think the industry has identified that as probably one of the easiest way to move into more sustainable products. And as a result of that, that drives a whole chain of value in terms of, if you want the ingredients and someone's going to buy that, then for the manufacturer, for farmers or people within the whole chain, more money is going to be made, and overall the whole economy is going to be much more feasible, because obviously if you only want a very small amount of upcycle ingredients, it takes a lot of energy and money to produce, and if everyone's in it, then it just makes the whole ingredient chain a lot more affordable, and therefore a lot more people will be using it. And I think there's also much more focus into localized productions as well. We're much less about just producing from the cheapest country. We're also more thinking about the carbon footprints of, okay, if you were to make this from the Far East, then what's the carbon footprint when it comes down to shipping the whole products over?
Terence, I'm going to have to wrap us up because I see that we're going to be closed out because we have 30 seconds left. Terence, this is a really nice way to conclude this session, because we invite all of you to be part of the movement, because it will only become easier the more people are in it. And even if it seems overwhelming to structure your own business, your whole business model on it, start somewhere and do something. And we really look forward to hearing. You can reach out to the three founders here, take a look at their websites. I do weekly updates on everything that I hear on business, people, and planet. You feel free to subscribe on my website, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Natasha, Terence, and Nicholas.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.